I'm sure most of you probably heard this past week the rumors flying around of a possible Lennox Lewis comeback, that he was trying to get 100 million to fight a Klitschko. All I can say is foolishness. Foolishness. Personally, I actually do believe that Lennox Lewis is actually contemplating, or he has been half serious about making a comeback recently. And the reason I say it is because it's not just because of the comments that he made recently about wanting 100 million to fight a Klitschko. No, not just that. But I've seen him recently. He was on a program with Tyson Fury and Scott Welch and Frank Bruno, and obviously Johnny Nelson was on the program on Sky, and Anthony Joshua. And on that program, Lennox Lewis was talking as though he's still a fighter now. He wasn't talking about himself as if he used to be a fighter, because Frank Bruno was on there and he was talking about his boxing career in the past tense. He was talking about his, status as a fighter in the past tense. Whereas recently, not just on that program, but on several programs and in several interviews that I've seen of Lennox Lewis, he's been talking about himself as a fighter in the current tense, in the present tense. Little bit odd. Lewis was always, during his career, a very egotistical man. A lot of fighters are egotistical, but Lewis was always very egotistical. Even though he was a bit awkward publicly, he never had the most charisma or anything like that. But if you really studied this guy, and I read everything on Lennox Lewis when I was young, read his autobiography, watched all his fights, listened to all his interviews. He was obvious if you really, study Lennox's persona. He was a very egotistical guy. Yeah, borderline arrogant guy. And I think he is a little bit, edgy around some of these younger heavyweights. He's always felt a certain way about the Klitschkos, obviously Vitaly and Wladimir. He likes the limelight. I know Lennox misses the limelight. Now, that's one reason, because of the way he's been talking, that's one reason I think he has been kind of half serious about possibly making a comeback. The other reason is he seems to have lost a lot of weight recently. And in the comments that he made regarding the possible Klitschko situation, he said that he's been in provisional training. I actually think he has been in provisional training. I think he has been doing boxing training and trying to lose some weight. I saw a video of him online as well, of him trying to school Deontay Wilder. I think being around all these new young heavyweights, obviously he was connected to David Price in the ill-fated Price-Thompson rematch. Then I saw a video of him online trying to teach Deontay Wilder a thing or two, how to throw a proper jab. I think being around a lot of these young heavyweights has kind of ignited the fire in Lennox Lewis a little bit. I know he is interested in training fighters, but I think at the same time his ego is, just stirring a little bit in his 48 or 50-year-old head. So I don't know, I think he has been a little bit serious. And I was watching Boxing Beats and Rhymes video about this possible Lewis comeback, and he said that there's apparently been whisperings on the grapevine that Lewis has had some business situations that have gone south recently, and he's lost quite a bit of money. So that might be another motivation. Now, as far as how successful he would be if he chose to come back at damn near 50 years old, in my opinion, it would be a disaster if Lewis came back. I think he would get destroyed by both the Klitschkos. As much as I was on Vladimir's case for his shameful display against Povetkin, I don't see Lewis coming back at damn near 50 years old after over 10 years out the ring and having much success against Wladimir Klitschko, a guy who's been very active and a guy who's at the top of his game. I don't see it. I think Lewis would most likely get destroyed and knocked the fuck out, especially by Wladimir. I don't think his sharpness will be there. His fitness won't be there. People talk about George Foreman coming back after 10 years. When George Foreman came back after 10 years, he was only 38. He wasn't 48 or 49. Yeah? For one. Also, when George Foreman came back at the age of 38, he had a whole heap of fights against easier opponents to get back in the swing of things before he went anywhere near a world-class heavyweight. And by the time he actually did get his first title shot against Evander Holyfield, he took a terrible beating against Evander Holyfield. I mean, he put up a spirited fight. He landed a few good shots here and there. But for the most part, Holyfield beat the crap out of him. And that was after Foreman had a lot of comeback fights, and he was very active in the lead up to the Holyfield fight. Once he got in there with Holyfield, a truly world-class heavyweight, Holyfield beat the crap out of him. You know, and he also got the crap beaten out of him by a contender, Alex Stewart. You know, Alex Stewart. So, and then his next world title fight after that was against Tommy Morrison, and Morrison beat the crap out of him. And then when he finally won the world title against Michael Moorer at the age of 46, he was getting the crap beat out of him against Michael Moorer for 9.5 rounds until he landed his big right hand and took Moorer out. So even though George Foreman did it, it was a hell of a hard road getting a heavyweight title back. You know, it wasn't just some easy thing where he just turned up after 10 years and won a heavyweight title. It wasn't like that. He had to take some terrible beatings before he finally, you know, won a title against Moorer after getting another terrible beating for 9.5 rounds. So I don't see Lewis, and let me tell you this, the Klitschko's are better than Michael Moorer. Much more difficult guys to beat than Michael Moorer, let me tell you that. So I don't see Lewis getting in there and having much success against either Klitschko. And to be honest with you, as much as people hate Tyson Fury, and as much as I think a prime Lennox Lewis would destroy Tyson Fury, in my opinion, a damn near 50-year-old Lennox Lewis, I think, would probably get the crap beaten out of him even by Tyson Fury. If he's coming back, you know, without any warm-up fights especially, I think Fury would probably destroy him. You know, so I think Lennox Lewis would be well advised to stay the hell away from the boxing ring. Maybe go to business management school, you know, maybe learn how to run businesses better. I don't know. Maybe try and go back into commentating, maybe go into the training, you know, training fighters, but leave his ego alone, because Lewis still seems to have this ego. You know, not only did he have the ego as a fighter, which may have been justified to a certain degree, but he also seems to have this arrogance and ego as a trainer, that he's somehow a great trainer. But great fighters don't always make great trainers. In fact, a lot of the time, great fighters don't make great trainers at all. They make terrible trainers. So, you know, the art of being a great trainer is very different than being a great fighter. So I'm not saying Lewis can't become a great trainer, but it's still up in the air. It still remains to be seen. But I think he needs to put his ego aside a little bit if he's going to learn as a trainer. He definitely has a lot of things to teach, no question, because he's a fountain of knowledge. You know, what he doesn't know about heavyweight boxing is probably not even worth knowing. He knows a hell of a lot. But being able to implement that and teach it to people is another thing. So, I don't know. But I think Lewis would be well advised to forget about ever stepping back in the ring again. You know, I think that time has come and gone. He had his opportunity after the Vitali fight to come back and give Vitali a rematch and, you know, do all that. Even though he did beat Vitali fair and square, you know, if he wanted to come back, if he had that itch to get in there and fight some of the younger guys, he should have done it back in the days when he had the opportunity to fight Vitali, or maybe come back and fight Wladimir. Now I think it's way too late. Other people don't think Lewis is serious. Maybe he ain't serious. You know, who knows? Only Lennox Lewis really knows. But I personally suspect that there is half of him that is a little bit serious about making a comeback. You know, I personally suspect that, but I think it would be a terrible idea and it would definitely end in disaster. And, you know, regardless of whether he's an old man, I think it would harm his legacy getting beaten at this stage in the eyes of the general public. I think the hardcore boxing crowd, for the most part, wouldn't, you know, put too much stock in Lewis getting knocked out by a Klitschko at this stage. I think they would say, well, he's 50 years old, been off a long time. You know, no one comes back at 50 and wins a world title. You know, especially not without any substantial amount of comeback fights. So I think hardcore boxing people would say, nah, it doesn't really damage his legacy. But the general boxing public, the general population would, I think, hold it against Lewis, and it would tarnish his legacy. You know, people still hold it against Roy Jones Jr., the amount of times he's been knocked out since the second Tarver fight. And it really has tarnished Roy Jones's legacy. It has tarnished his legacy. And it's like people completely dismiss Roy Jones's entire career now, despite the fact he was absolutely dominating in his prime, dominating people like James Toney and Hopkins when they were young, when they was young and in their primes, dominating guys like that, making the common opponents that he had with people like the Eubanks and Nigel Benn and James Toney and Michael Nunn. He had a lot of common opponents with those guys, and he was able to beat the common opponents way better than anyone else was able to beat them. You know? So Roy Jones' legacy really has been tarnished by the devastating defeats that he suffered as a washed up fighter. But when he was in his prime, this guy was something special, once in a lifetime kind of talent. But, you know, most boxing fans really doubt his greatness now. You know, they really doubt his greatness. People really have short memories, and they doubt his greatness, and they don't think he was ever really that great based on what has happened after the first Tarver fight, basically, when he was already, I think, 36, 37 years old by then. So it is what it is. So I don't think Lewis should come back. I think it would be a terrible move. I think it would end in disaster. I hope it don't happen. It probably won't happen. You know, it probably won't happen, and I hope it don't. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole situation. So yeah, let me know how you feel below. Yeah, this is Hatman. I'm out.